In this second and final lesson of File Import Component Training, we're going to call an order create object and create orders from the data imported from the Excel spreadsheet. I'm logged into the project File Import Component Training. The first thing we're going to do is copy the first lesson. This is going to be lesson 2. And this is going to be called Order Create Object Transaction. We're going to add now the order create function to this import. So we're going to go right to buttons, and we're going to add a new button. I'm going to call that Create Orders. It needs to be a transaction. We're going to define the transaction message. You always need to know if things succeeded or not. I'll bring the error message back when I map the transaction. Now under the detail, we're actually going to add, first is an if then else condition. And this if then else is if customer changes. Because every time the customer changes, we need to create a new order header. That's it. One of our options on a conditional is if a field changes. So if customer 901 becomes 902, we need to create a new header. So under the if, we're going to add a transaction. And the first thing is we're going to do is an OE order header create. Then we're going to add another transaction, add OE order line create. Because every time the customer changes, we have to create a header and a line. On the else condition, I'm just going to create a line. Create a line unless we need to create a header and a line. And the last thing I'm going to add is a stored procedure. Import update is processed. Remember I said we needed that. We need that here and here. Because every time we do an object call, that's a line that's processed and we need to update that line. Now we need to map this data. And the first thing, a general rule is that all method parameters have to be defined. Some object properties do too. In general, most of the time, but I'll show you a change of that rule, most object properties are optional, but not in the case of the order line. On the order number, we're going to set a default. Now, the default's going to be a space, and that by not passing an order, the system is going to give us an order number and create one. I obviously need a customer. Alternate address, again, default. We don't have one, got to put a space in. Order date, have to have a value from a view. We're going to use, I believe, arrival date. Again, we can go back and look at the spreadsheet, and that looks like a good date to use. Now remember, this is the first mapping. Once we map the spreadsheet and all this object information, we just keep getting new order imports from our customers, and then we just keep dropping those in and importing them. Return order number used. This is a return value, and we're going to use this. This is the return order number. And then we have an error message, and we're going to return the error message. Now, under object properties, we are going to have a couple of them that we're going to define. We're going to define username. And this is just the current user. We've done this before. We're going to define the OEPO number, and I'm going to make that a default. And I'm actually going to put in here lesson 2. We're going to know that lesson 2 populated that number. And then we're going to take the ship via code, and as I showed in the spreadsheet over here, we have a carrier code. So we're going to populate that one too. The carrier. And that's it. We've done all the methods, either with a space, a default space, or a real value, or a return value. Now we'll define the line. The first thing, let me go to object properties. The order number, and this is something that's new, is a variable. The first object is going to be executed before the second object. When that object executes, it, because I gave it a return value, will populate a variable in a system. So you'll see here transaction name, OE order header create. And this is the return order number from that. So once it executes, we're going to be able to grab that for the next transaction. And is order, default is true. Has to be an order, a quote, or something. In this case, it's an order. So, well, moving on from that, we've got the methods that we've got to define. So let me take the view and get the item number, the view, and get the location. And thinking of that, while I'm thinking about the location, if I went back to the order header create, I would also have the manufacturing location. That could come from the view as well. There's no order to these things. You can go back and forth. Just make sure they all get filled in. Quantity ordered is from the view. Which is item quantity. We use that for that and quantity to ship. Price, we have a price from the view. We'll use the price coming in since it's in the sheet. Cost I'm going to set as a default, and I've done this before by setting a -1. I'm just going to go get it from the item location table. Request date, we have a ship date. We'll use that for all the dates here. We're going to skip the price calculation. That's a default true, because we're going to pass the price in, and we have to return the error code. That takes care of all these. These are all defined. Again, it's important you make sure that you check all the method parameters. And we just defined a few objects. Now let's jump down to the next order line. And same thing, we need to go into by variable. Same thing again. And is order. Default true. Is an order. And we need to go through every one of these properties again. We'll have to repeat all this. It's important that I take my time and do this correctly. This is the ship date. Oops. And this was a default. Skip is true. And return is the error message. Let's check these one more time. We have the item number, we have the location, the ship date, on the quantity ordered. Wait, I'm sorry. This is quantity ordered. So we need to come down here and make this item quantity. So I'm going to double check this. I don't know why I put that ship date in there. Item quantity, item quantity, item price, default -1, ship date, skip price true, error message. Okay. Now, the last thing we have to do is define import update is processed. Remember, we had the table name. We added that to the view. And now we have the table name in here. And then we have the ID in the view. Now what that does by ID always points to a unique column. So by passing the table and an ID, we're able to update that directly with very little data. Makes it very simple to do. And here's the ID. And okay, so we'll save all that, and we're done defining the view. So we're ready to run this. We already have data in here, so we're going to process all the rows if we have this all mapped correctly. So let's see if we can create the orders. Takes just a little bit, and they're all successfully completed. Now remember, I said that once we processed every one of these rows, that we would update the is processed column, and that the selection criteria for this grid was that they were not processed. But now these rows have been processed. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is if any error would have occurred in the header create, the line creates, anywhere along the line, then none of these orders would have been created because the entire transaction is in a secure transaction, and it would have been rolled back and we would have seen error messages pop up. If I refresh this grid, then all these rows will go away because they've all been processed, and we'll do that. So there's nothing to do. Those rows are still in the database, but they're just all marked as is processed. Now I want to go over to the Agility Explorer. This is the user tool. Under the Explorer is an option of OE Open Order Master List. This is a list of all orders in the system. Now remember, the PO was a field that we marked as lesson 2. So if I do a search on that, these are the orders that were created in the system. And if I look at this particular order, 703, you'll see that it is for customer 901, but all 3 lines are there. If I go back to the spreadsheet, I look at 901, stem, lever, and hub, would have been the 3 lines that would have been put onto the same order. And that's the end of this lesson. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video tutorial, and I encourage you to move on to the next video tutorial in this series.